Some interesting new reporting on the last day of Trump's presidency from the Wall Street Journal. Let's throw this up there on the screen. So Trump in private apparently has been mulling whether he will start a new political party. This is really interesting, Krystal, because it actually comes basically on the heels of what we've talked about a lot here, which is that in the midst of Mitch McConnell seemingly open to impeachment, Liz Cheney, some other Republicans, and the immense kind of pushback that he's gotten from basically the entire establishment wing of the party, Trump feels like it would be the ultimate screw you in order to start a new political party. And I'm looking at it in a couple of different ways, which is that it is the logical conclusion of the split that he's basically tried to evolve, with the empowering much of the Trump wing and not really denouncing the QAnon wing, and then, encouraging the riots on Capitol Hill. But I also see it as basically negotiating tactic against McConnell and the other Senate Republicans being like, hey, you impeach me, screw you. I will start a new political party, turn all of your lives into a living hell, and make sure that none of you ever get elected again. But in general, I think that's probably the way that he's looking at it. But regardless, this could really be a gigantic schism in American politics.
I mean, this is a very, very lazy man that we're talking about here. So do I actually think that he's going to get it together to do all the work it takes to have an actual third party that has some sort of relevance in politics? No, I do not. So I think you're right to look at it as essentially a threat to hold over the heads of right now Senate Republicans, essentially, who, I think it's unlikely that they get the numbers to ultimately convict. But the fact that Mitch McConnell is still out there, and we're going to cover this with the panel too, still out there and actually directly laid blame at the president's feet for the Capitol riots, that's a significant threat to Trump's future, because the one piece of leverage and the one tool that he still has in his toolkit in order to keep all of us hanging on his every word and relevant in the media and super important within the Republican Party is the possibility of him running again in 2024. He does not want that to be taken away from him ultimately. So this is a way of really sort of flexing his muscles and saying to McConnell, hey, you can convict me in the Senate, but I'm going to take my toys and I'm going to go home. And it's a real threat, because even though Trump, he's too lazy to actually do it, but we both know the polling that shows he has more sway and more popularity within the Republican Party than anyone else. A large part of the grassroots Republican Party sees themselves more aligned with Trump than they do with the Republican Party itself. That gives him quite a bit of power and leverage in this situation. And honestly, look, I think McConnell is kind of screwed and the Republican Party is kind of screwed either way. You can't really keep these two factions fully together anymore. Trump has just made that impossible. I mean, he's just made that schism too large, and he's made the Trumpist, direction, the stop the steal sort of conspiratorial direction too toxic for the elite portion of the Republican Party to sort of abide and stand by. I was reading some analysis. I think 20 of the top corporate PAC givers to the Republican Party have pulled back, at least for those who continue to question the election results. So I think it is kind of an unresolvable conflict at this point, and there's no figure on the horizon who could really unite those two factions back together.
I completely agree with you. And that's the thing is about Trump is, look, he's the single most popular figure in the Republican Party, the most beloved popular figure in their party since Reagan. And that's the amount of stamp that he has left upon the Republican base. If he started a new political party, I think he'd probably take about 55 to 60% of Republican voters with him. Now, as we said here before, that's not enough to win a national election. It's not enough to win even an electoral college victory. They barely could eke that out under the current schisms. And so they're going to have big problems in the future. Now, like we said, who the hell knows what happens in American politics? Joe Biden could screw this thing up monumentally in the first 9 months like Obama. He could, unite the entire right around some sort of Tea Party-esque type crusade. They could win a huge midterm elections and then 6 years later come and win the presidency. Totally within the realm of possibility. But if things are going to go the way that we think they are, I think that this schism is going to be a big part of it. Whether he starts a political party or not, it's just emblematic of how he has a huge hold on the Republican base. And as you find out in Georgia, it's a deal with the devil in many parts, because you can't win a statewide election, but you also can't win without Trump in terms of winning a primary. So it's a very difficult bind that they put themselves in.
That's really well said. And that's what we've really seen in the past, I guess, 2 years has become completely clear, because there was a time when you might have been able to make the argument, hey, Trump is good for the Republican Party. You know, we got the White House with Trump, and maybe he's actually of political benefit overall to the Republican Party. But you can't possibly make that case anymore when he has now not only caused them to lose the House, caused them now to lose the Senate, but obviously even he himself could not get himself re-elected as an incumbent president, which, you know, is actually very challenging to lose when you're an incumbent president. We even re-elected George W. Bush as one example. So the sort of political mystique has gone from him too. The idea that he himself can be useful to the broader Republican Party has also really erased and vanished. So yeah, it's a catch-22, because you need him he does energize, he does bring out voters that don't normally vote, he does increase turnout in a way that pollsters have a really hard time tracking, but he is so toxic that he actually ends up turning off more people than he turns on and brings into the party. So that's the bind that they find themselves in. Feel really sorry for them, Saagar. I'm just like, my heart breaks for the situation that Mitch McConnell finds himself in right now. I don't delight in it or take any pleasure from it whatsoever. But I don't see any way out of the bind that they're currently in. And look, politics is funny. You never know how people can muddle through. You don't want to underestimate the ability of Democrats to screw everything up, as we've been covering as well, with the $2,000 checks as one initial example here. But I think the Republican schism has really hardened into a divide that is absolutely unmanageable.
No, and you're right. And it's something that a lot of people in politics don't seem to understand, just the huge level of disconnect between the elites and the actual base here. Yeah, I'm just shedding a lot of tears for the NRSC and for these other organizations, which are not going to be able to get their corporate money. No, good luck, folks. Maybe try actually appealing to people and not opposing the checks and so much more. Might raise a little bit more, but hey, that's just such a crazy idea.
All right. We're rising for you guys after those.